This study was made in 2010 by Dr. Griffiths, Dr. Parsons, and Dr. Hill to study the self-esteem and quality of life of obese children and adolescents. Prior to this study, there have only been 17 self-esteem and 25 quality of life studies throughout the longitudinal, cross-sectional, and intervention designs published since 1994. Studies have shown that parent proxy assessments and child-completed assessments were consistent in showing significant reductions in global self-esteem and quality of life in obese youth. There's no difference in the results from children to the results of adolescents, so they did not really consider gender or ethnicity while doing the study, just solely based on obesity in general and how it affects self-esteem. So what did they find? Well, as expected, evidence that obese adolescents had an increased risk of depression, disordered eating, and social rejection and victimization by peers was more evident than in children. This is definitely due to more adolescents on social media and creating this body image they're supposed to have. The distress is due to body image issues and them constantly feeling unattractive when hanging out with their peers. They found that as children got older, their self-esteem decreased. Children had a correlation of negative 0.12, adolescents had a correlation of negative 0.22, and young adults had a correlation of negative 0.28. So this means that as they aged, their insecurity and self-esteem decreased. Their insecurity increased and their self-esteem decreased. There are a few studies that show a positive correlation between losing weight and an increase in self-esteem. This was due to research being done with smaller sample sizes and different definitions on what being obese or overweight mean. Some studies that the study based their finding off of put overweight and obese in the same category, and others based it on an individual's BMI. So this definitely caused a mix in the results. So there are different criteria for the experiment that needed to be met to participate in the cross-sectional and prospective studies. So first, they needed a comparison group that was not obese or overweight. These included a global or total score, as well as scores for subdomains such as perceptions of physical appearance, social acceptance, etc. Studies reporting only global or another unidimensional aspect of self-esteem or quality of life were excluded. And they needed an appropriate definition of obesity. So for the 95th percentile, a BMI Z-score of 1.64 or 120% overweight. Studies reporting associations with BMI as continuous variable were excluded, as those were combining overweight and obese youth. So what did they find? The results were they had low scores found for physical appearance and self-esteem in both children and adolescents. For social acceptance and competence, the findings were a bit inconsistent. 2 studies reported lower scores for obese children. Another study recorded low scores in obese girls only. 2 other studies found no differences in obese and non-obese children and adolescents, so there's probably no correlation with obesity and social relationships. Out of 5 studies for global self-esteem, 4 reported lower global self-esteem in obese children. For gender differences, the findings were a bit mixed too. Only 6 studies included both boys and girls, and 3 reported their findings independently, so only based on girls and only based on boys. This showed lower social acceptance, or one showed lower social acceptance in obese girls, but not boys. Another study found no correlation between performance in school and obesity. However, in 13 to 14-year-olds, obese boys from all ethnic groups scored lower than non-obese boys, while white and Hispanic, non-blacks, obese girls scored lower than their non-obese counterparts. And went for the decrease in weight and BMI after an intervention. 5 studies reported a decrease in weight and BMI. It was a 4 to 6 week weight loss camp paired with therapy for 6 months. all the findings showed a slight increase in self-esteem and social acceptance and competence. So my discussion question was, were you surprised with your results? If not, how do they differ from what you thought they would be? And these are my sources.